this is a calculator that, I built over time, and also a hard money lender is giving me. This is how I analyze deals. So let's go over here to wholesale analysis. Okay. So let's run a scenario. A wholesaler sends me a deal and he says ARV is 550. Okay. And I always check, right? Because you wholesalers always, we inflate. And a lot of the time we pick the highest comp and just to make it work. But and then I see that the purchase price is 420, right? The way that I look at deals is you have your holding costs, right? You have your 12% interest for hard money, 2 points, 15% down. So you'd have to bring in a certain 63,000 on this deal. And right now I'm just running the numbers to see if this makes even sense. Okay. Let's say on this house, it's a medium rehab. So let's say it's 5 months from acquiring it to flipping it to listing it and having it sold, 5 months. Commissions, 6%, 3% to list it, 3% for the buyer's agent, so 6%, and 1% for the closing costs. The house is 2,000 square feet and it needs a medium rehab. So I go here, basic, you got basic, medium, everything. It's got the specific, the numbers per square foot, and I go medium. So according to this math, it's $2,000, 2,000 square feet times 48,000. 24 is $48,000 rehab. And this one is like, if I know the exact bid, like it's going to cost, like if I know the rehab's actually 36,754, then I can just go here and go other. Okay. I want to make $15,000 on this deal. So that means if I got this at 420, I made $15,000, and these are all the right numbers. My flipper is going to make $10,000 on this deal. It's going to be like a 2% return on the deal. Nobody's doing that deal. So what I can do is I can reduce my wholesale fee to see if it's a deal. Okay, it's at 4%. Nobody's doing this deal. Okay, then I'm like, well, maybe that's this one. People start fluffing their numbers. They're like, well, maybe it's the rehab is basic and it's not. Oh, even basic is just a little bit tinier. So you're like, okay, it doesn't work. Now you got to start changing your purchase price, right? So the wholesaler sent it out at 420, it's still not that good of a deal. For me, my buyers, the majority of my buyers want to be 10% and higher. They want between 10 and 20%. Obviously they want more than 20. But if they're making, and what the math on this guys is just basically, if the ARV is 550, they want to make 10% of that. So they want to make a return of 55,000.
Yeah.
55,000. So I have to get that number close to that for this to even be remotely something they'd be interested in. Okay. So that would make sense. Someone would do this, but I want to make more than 15. So you just change the numbers a little bit. And there you go. You're at 10%. So this is a deal. Someone would do that, right? This is for flippers, right? And if it's close to my 10%, like if it's at 9%, but it's something that's like up in the air, then it's something I would send to my guy, right? Because I know his numbers. So this is another thing that's really cool about knowing who your buyers are as well. Let's say a buyer who gets hard money at 10%. And he pays 1 point, and he's actually a real estate agent. So he doesn't have to pay to list it when he lists it when he flips it. So instead of it being 6%, he does 3%, right? He just has to pay for the buyer's commission. So we just went from us being at 10% and it being an okay deal to, for this, my specific buyer, for it being a really good deal where I can still bring it to him. And I just doubled my wholesale fee, or I just went, he's still willing to do 10%. He's just able to pay way more than majority of people because he's an agent. His hard money's cheaper. He buys with cash, his own money. So do you guys kind of see the power of like knowing what your buyer does and what he spends and what he wants? And if he's a real estate agent, that's
so in this case, if the price is too high that the wholesaler is asking for, you go back to the wholesaler and be like, hey, I have a buyer. Would you take this price?
Of course. Yeah. So that's where kind of adding your fee on top that's kind of like the intro. That's like the intro of like how we talk to people, just so we just can proceed forward. But if I go to them and I say, hey, look, I ran this by a lot of my buyers. I know you said you're not getting any hits. I think you got a little too much. Really, the best that my buyers are willing to pay is, 380. And that's, and let's just split the deal because it's, I've had to work really hard on this one. I don't know if you want to like try and negotiate with them like after you agreed, whatever. But all I'm saying is, yes, you can go back and say, hey, this is the feedback I'm getting. And then that's when the wholesaler would say, oh, shoot, I only have it at 390. And then you'd say, hey, that's fine. Can you call and renegotiate and tell the person you're 100% solid at 360 and me and you will split 20K because I have someone at 380. And then they'd say, oh yeah, sure. Let's do it. And I'll give you an example. I had one of my students brought me a deal a couple months ago that the ARV was 325. He had it at 275. And he's like, hey, can you help me find a buyer? That's not a deal. You guys all know 325, 275 on a rehab, not going to work. So I said to him, bro, I just asked one of my buyers. I have a buyer at 200,000. You're at 275. You're 100,000. You're way, way higher than you need to be. Just call the seller and ask if you can renegotiate to like 280. Sorry, 180. Okay. Cause he's at 275, go to 180. Then we'd make 20, we'd split it. Right. And he's like, okay. So he called them. He's like, hey, sorry, I got my numbers wrong. I'm new to this. Can you do 180? And they're like, yeah, look, sure. That's fine. So why did they accept like pretty much $100,000 less? Is because they probably just thought he was a sucker. And they were probably like, hey, let's just go with the offer because if it works, we just made bank and everyone else is lowballing us. So when it worked out. So sometimes sellers will just accept an offer, even if they know it's probably not legit, just in hopes that it will work. We probably do that all the time with buyers too. We're like, hey, let's just cross our fingers and hope they buy it. So yes, a very, very long response and answer to you, Sharad, but that's, yes, you can go back and renegotiate, especially if you have a buyer that's ready at a specific price.